Yeah, wonderful. Okay, I see those numbers climbing still, but starting to slow down. So I'm going to get us started. Um, my name's Haley Ross, and I work for the Columbia Mountains Institute of Applied Ecology, or CMI for short. And I know that a number of you are returning to this webinar and have been attending a number of them already this season. Thanks so much for coming back. I haven't been able to join you for the live delivery, as some of you know, and so I'm super excited to be back today. I'm joined here by Kendall Benish with the Kootenay Conservation Program, or KCP, as you may know them as. And this year we're presenting the 10th season of CMI's Cred Talks, or the Columbia Region Ecological Discussions, as we like to call them, and KCP's 12th season of the Winter Webinar Series. But before we get going with our webinar here, I think it's important that we all just pause and take a moment to acknowledge the region in which we work as being the unceded territory of the Sinixt, the Secwepemc, the Ktunaxa, and the Syilx Okanagan peoples, who have stewarded and cared for this land, water, and wildlife since time immemorial. And I want to invite you to put your own land acknowledgement into the chat. So it's a nice opportunity to find that chat because we'll be using it later. So at the bottom of your screen, open up that chat icon. Let us know whose traditional territory you're zooming in from today and introduce yourself. And as those introductions come in, I'll start to introduce the webinar series. Okay. So this season of webinars has been exploring the theme of lessons for the next chapter of restoration and stewardship. We're featuring 5 speakers who are discussing this theme from different perspectives, reflecting on key lessons from their careers in ecological restoration, land stewardship, and ecosystem monitoring, and emphasizing the important insights that can and should inform future restoration in our region. This year's series is financially supported by the Okanagan Nation Alliance, by Tech, by Ecoscape Environmental Consultants, LGL Limited, as well as KCP's program funders. So our gratitude to these organizations for which this series would not be possible. Today we're here to welcome Delaney Hall, Timur, technician with the Okanagan Nation Alliance. He'll be presenting on using traditional knowledge and science in restoration using beaver mimicry to revive the watershed in the Okanagan Nation. And we're going to learn more about Delaney and do a bit more introductions in just a moment. But before we do that, I want to take the opportunity to tell you just briefly a little bit about CMI, who we are and what we do. So CMI is a nonprofit society and association working for people in the various fields of ecology. CMI is sort of in the business, I guess you could say, of providing professional development opportunities. And those come in many forms, such as conferences, courses, and webinars that address everything from sort of field and data science type topics to more complex land management conundrums, which would come in the form of a conference type event. But our website is a really great place to learn more about what we do. Check out our upcoming events there and past. But also mainly what I want to do is flag the fantastic resources that are on that website. So for example, we have proceeding documents from all our major events and recordings from keynote talks such as this one. So now I'm going to pass it over to Kendall Benish.
Thank you, Haley. My name's Kendall, and I'm joining you on behalf of Kootenay Conservation Program, or KCP. And we're a diverse network of more than 85 land and water conservation and stewardship groups, federal, provincial, and local governments, First Nations, land trusts, agricultural producers, and educational institutions who all contribute to conserving our region. The purpose of KCP's partnership is to cooperatively conserve biological diversity and naturally functioning ecosystems of the region through land conservation and stewardship, and to generate the support and resources needed to advance this effort, including building technical knowledge and expertise through webinars like this. We are excited to be hosting this webinar series again with CMI and would like to give an additional thanks to all of our program sponsors, really without whom we wouldn't be able to support this type of work. And I just have a couple of housekeeping details and then we'll get started with the webinar. You'll probably notice this webinar is being recorded and it'll be posted within a week to both CMI's event webpage and YouTube channel, along with KCP's Winter Webinar Series webpage. We will have a Q&A at the end of Delaney's presentation. So please use the Q&A function in your Zoom toolbar to add a question to the queue, not the chat. So it's a separate Q&A button, and we'll do our best to make our way through them at the end here. And you'll notice in that Q&A, there's an upvote or a thumbs up button. If there's a question that you'd really like to see answered, please use that feature. And back to you, Haley.
Great, thank you. Okay, so now the reason why you're all here, we're going to be passing it over to Delaney. Delaney calls it, like I said, his position can be written as Temur technician with the Okanagan Nation Alliance. For those of us English speaking, that translates to all living things. And I am going to let Delaney introduce himself. He's going to do a much better job of it than I am. So I'll just pass it over to you.
Limlight, thank you. Why hustle halt? Squeezed Quilshnina in Summer Squeezed Delaney Hall, Kintil in Kameep. Hello, good day. My name is Red Owl. My given name is Delaney Hall. I am from Inkameep, a member of the Osuyas Indian Band within the Syilx Nation.
Mm.
Just 1 second. My father is Mario George from Inkameep of the Syilx Nation. My mother is Sonia Hall from Zucht of the Intlakepmuch. That's the Thompson. And yeah, I just want to thank you for having me and for letting me share some of the stuff that's been shared with me and some of the stuff that I've seen and experienced. I work at the Okanagan Nation Alliance Natural Resource Department as a Temuk technician, and that's all living things. We work on a number of projects for the nation that are endorsed and deemed as a priority by the nation. We have such an outstanding team here at the ONA that work tirelessly for our nation. They help and support all the communities within our nation. Some of the projects that we have been involved in include bighorn sheep, mountain goats, cougars, lynx, grizzly bear, snakes, bullfrogs, birds, bats, whitetail, mule deer, and owls. So there's something that we have started to pursue and something that has not been addressed yet and is near and dear to my heart, something that I've been talking about for 20 plus years is the riparian areas along the edges of our waterways. So we are here to talk for the Siushka, the water. We need water at the forefront of industry and not play catch up trying to fix it after the fact. We need to be proactive and strategic, not reactive. We have entered into a time of flood, drought, and fire, but this is part of a bigger conversation we need to have. When you talk about the water, you need to talk about the land and all living things. When you talk about, so we are here to talk for the Tumhulauch, the land. We're here to talk for the Temuk, all living things, the forest, the wildlife, and plants as they are all connected. The laws, policies, practices, and standards that industry follows today are failing us, our water, our land, our forest, our wildlife, and plants. I must be clear, I'm not against progress. Things can be done in a sustainable manner. But you can't just call it sustainable and then do whatever the heck you want. So first, the beaver, the buffalo, the caribou, the antelope, the salmon, the chinook, mountain sheep, mountain goat, porcupine. I do not want to be at the same table 10 years from now talking about another species we use to sustain ourselves. We as Indian people, we see animals different than most people. We see them as our relatives. If we take care of them, they will take care of us. We have a number of creation stories that have been passed down since the beginning of time. And I was told as a child in the beginning of time, before there was people, there were only animals and plants. The Creator had gathered them all together and said, the new people will be coming soon. We must help them. They will have nothing. Salmon was the first to stand up. I will take care of the people. I will offer my flesh for food and all that live in the water as well. Bear stood up and said, I will offer my flesh for food and fur for clothing and all that live on the land as well. Saskatoonberry stood up, I will offer my flesh for food and all that grow above the ground as well. Bitterroot stood up, I will offer my flesh for food and all that grow beneath the ground as well. And so it was. It has come to a time in our lives that we must stand up together and protect the ones that have stood up before us to help us sustain our lives. We must protect our relatives, the ones who cannot speak for themselves. We are the caretakers of this land. Since I was a young child, I have seen our landscape change drastically for the worst. I have witnessed, as many others within our nation, the population of all wildlife that we use to sustain ourselves, like salmon, chinook, deer, elk, moose. They have all suffered a big loss in numbers. So I am having problems here with my slides. They don't seem to want to change.
Sometimes it goes to sleep. If you just click on your slide, it might wake it up.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. Delaney, maybe tip your camera a tiny bit so we can see your whole face there. Yeah, perfect.
There we go. So we need to act now to protect the water, land, forest, wildlife, and plants for future generations. Our way of life is being threatened. There are still some people in our communities that do not buy meat from the store. They still rely on what they get from the land. Every year we lose more and more and remember less of what it used to be. Some of our young people don't even know what it used to be like. Even in my generation, I noticed as a teenager, less and less fish every year. The herd's getting smaller every year. Even our fish are smaller than they used to be, both salmon and chinook. I remember seeing herds of 20, 30 deer everywhere. You go a little ways down the road and you see another and then another group. You never had to walk very far from home to get what you needed. I have heard elders talk in their time. They used to see herds of 40, 50 deer all over and bachelor herds. And you don't see that anymore. You're lucky if you see 6 deer together nowadays. What used to take 1 to 2 days to get what you needed to feed the family now takes weeks and weeks of hunting to get what you need, and you have to travel further and further from home. As I got older, I wanted to instill some meaningful change in logging as I saw it as one of the biggest contributors of what I was seeing on the land. I figured I could help change it from the inside, and I became a faller at 15 years. 8 of those summers, I was a wildland firefighter, and in shutdown times, I was employed in fisheries. And after I put my chainsaw away, I pursued a path of horticulture and now a Tumuke technician. As a faller, I was not able to make any meaningful change. I was told those are good ideas, but we aren't doing anything wrong. We are following the rules laid out by the government. The way logging is done today, well, let's call it what it really is. It's deforestation. Clear cuts are a total destruction of wildlife habitat. This needs to be addressed. Deforestation reduces the flow of moisture from the ground to the atmosphere, interrupting the natural rain cycle and in turn reducing the rain. It takes 2,500 seedlings to exchange the same amount of CO2 to oxygen that one old growth tree has the ability to do. To protect our water, land, forest, wildlife, and plants, the forest cannot be harvested in such a way. It is one of the cornerstones of all life to survive. It takes 100 years for the forest to recover from a clear cut, but they are cut on a 60, 80-year rotation. Our soils are getting worse. Some of our forests also need to remain undisturbed in the highlands at the headwaters to protect the water, land, forest, wildlife, and plants. In these large, wide open clear cuts, the snow melts faster. The rain does not absorb in the ground like it used to. It has increased the water flow of our streams and creeks. They have all suffered lots of erosion. They are not slow and windy like they used to be. Some streams and creek beds are 6 to 10 feet lower than what they used to be and have dropped the water table, and a lot do not engage the wetland anymore, which is such an important, rich landscape for all fish and wildlife. Every passing year, the floods have been steadily worse as more material and sediment has been filling our rivers, which has been destroying fish habitat. The Okanagan National Alliance Department has been doing such an outstanding job bringing the salmon and the Chinook home for over 20 years now. But our watersheds need to be protected from the top to the bottom, or it will continue to be an uphill battle. Now we are faced with less and less snow every year. Our waterways, wetlands, and riparian areas need to be protected better to ensure clean water and provide critical habitat for all fish and wildlife, and to give them free movement along waterways to have their little ones. Currently, BC Hydro has a practice of considering all fish, all streams fish bearing. This is an agreement between DFO, Ministry of Environment, and BC Hydro. All industries should follow and adopt this. The minimum industry standard for riparian buffer, they range from 5 meters to 100 meters based on the size of the water body. But none of these should be less than 50 meters from top of bank to ensure stream health, fish and wildlife habitat, and water quality, as all waterways are important. All trees should be retained within riparian zone to ensure shade for temperature regulation and to help trap sediment to ensure any unnecessary damage to fish habitat and water quality. I have seen trees cut in riparian zones leaving half stumps like 8 feet high, and contractors say we leave them that high because we need to leave shade for the water and for the fish and for bird habitat. No, riparian areas need all trees, not some trees, not dead cut trees, all trees. I've seen trees cut right to the edges of wetlands, and contractors say, that's not a wetland, it's dry. Even seasonal wetlands and seasonal runoff are all very important. Trees play an important role in these areas. They help with retaining water in the soil, stabilizing the soil, and preventing erosion. So let me ask you, what does everything on this planet need to survive? It needs water. So when doing restoration enhancement, we need to think in terms of best bang for your buck. What will be the most beneficial for all? There is a solution, not the end-all solution, but it will help going in the right direction and help make some real change. We at the Okanagan National Alliance have started on a project restoring and rebuilding our wetlands to revive our watersheds and reduce the severity of flood, drought, and fire with mimicking the beaver. Others have started down this path in the US and had great success with building beaver dam analogs, otherwise known, some people call them BDAs. Others have started down this path in BC. I had the pleasure of going to the Nicola Valley to help Nowayach Indian Band, and BC Wildlife Federation build beaver dam analogs. So BDAs are just a fancy name for a man-made beaver dam. They are a low-tech, low-cost approach to wetland restoration. They are just sticks in mud with posts inserted for added strength. They regulate stream flow, regulate temperature, enhancing fish rearing habitat by providing an abundance of food for the growing fish and wildlife habitat. What better ways to fix our watersheds than mimicking the beaver? We are focusing at the headwaters, all for the purpose of preparing to reintroduce beavers back into the highlands. We need to slow that cold water back down, keep more of it in the high country for longer to benefit our fish and all our wildlife. Having wetlands upstream that beavers create can decrease flood damage downstream. When we had beavers in the system, we had more fish than we could count. Yes, fish can get through, over, and around beaver dams. They have coexisted since the beginning of time. When I was a kid, I was taught from my elders one of the best places to fish was at a beaver pond, and that's where we caught some of our biggest fish. Western science sometimes takes a while to catch up, but the research now shows that 3 to 4 times more salmon and steelhead come back when beavers are in the system. There's more food for the fish in these wetlands that beavers create, so they get bigger before going out to the ocean. These structures would be used to help kickstart the restoration. Beavers have been known to take over after these have been put in place. People need to understand that beavers are a keystone species. What that means is their behavior helps shape the environment around them. They are the glue that holds habitats together. Their ponds are magnets for all wildlife. There used to be over 400 million beavers in every waterway at one point in this country until Hudson Bay came over, the Hudson Bay Company, and they got people to trap them to near extinction for hats. They were trapped for 300 years. Now there's an estimated 6 to 12 million beavers. That is a huge gap from before. Beavers create critical habitat for all species. They all depend on wetlands to survive. You'll see more muskrat, mink, weasels, otters, and all sorts of birds come back. Fish and wildlife numbers will start to go up. Beavers can have up to 6 little ones a year. When their numbers get too high, the cougar, the wolf, the coyote, lynx, bobcat, grizzly bears thin out their population. So they are an important part of the food web. More and more of our waterways are drying up in the summertime now. Beavers can help change that and help revive our watersheds and help heal our land. I've always heard our elders say water is the lifeblood of Mother Earth. When wetlands are re-engaged, you will see the landscape transform from a dust bowl to a rich, vibrant oasis that will help support lots of fish and wildlife and plants. Beaver dams can help improve water quality by acting as natural filters for chemicals like fertilizer and heavy metals. You will hear some people talk about flooding from when a beaver dam breaks. These beaver dams and these beaver dam analogs don't hold back tons and tons of water. The purpose is not to hold back massive amounts of water. They are in place to slow the water down like speed bumps and help spread the water out so it will soak back into the ground and recharge the groundwater and release it slowly over time throughout the year, which we desperately need. Wetlands are like a giant sponge that hold and retain water. You only see it's about 10% above the ground, and the other 90, about 90% is underground. A beaver dam complex is a network of dams, dozens and dozens of dams, all backing each other up. So when we're looking at restoration with beaver dam analogs, we need to understand the more, the better. It is estimated we have lost 90% of our wetlands. We need to protect our waterways from the erosion that cattle cause. It is of great concern. They need to be kept out of the waterways and the springs to prevent overgrazing of riparian plants that beavers feed on. Beavers can help improve rangeland for cattle. Beavers work best when another keystone species is in place. The wolves, they go hand in hand. Wolves keep the deer, the elk moving so they don't spend too much time in one area and overgraze the willows, the aspen, the cottonwoods, the dogwoods, sedges, grasses, lilies, cattails, everything that beavers feed on. There are benefits pre-fire. Restored areas will protect riparian areas from fire and create natural fire breaks. We need to reinforce our degraded riparian areas as they are great anchor points to fight fires from and great places to start cultural burns from and prescribed burns from. Fire desperately needs to be brought back to the land to rejuvenate the land in a good way. Wetlands also provide areas for animals during a fire and good benefits after a fire. Beaver mimicry can help capture sediment from fire-affected areas, as there is lots of sediment that is coming down after a fire because there's not a whole lot of vegetation to help capture that sediment before it gets into the waterway. So beavers are seen as pests. It has been ingrained in people's minds for so many years that beavers are bad. People move into their habitat, and when the beavers come back, people get mad saying that they keep flooding my land. So there are devices that you can use, a simple flow device like a pond leveler that can be installed on a beaver dam to avoid flooding to help reduce the size a beaver pond can get by letting water through. But beavers only build dams to hold enough water to protect them from predators. They don't just continuously build, just endlessly. They only build up to what they need. They also build canals away from their fawn, like travel corridors to reach food sources that are away from their pond. People have forgotten all the good beavers do. There's also simple flow devices that can be installed to protect culverts from being dammed as well. Water is life. When you talk about the water, you must talk about the land, the forest, the wildlife, and plants. Like oxygen, we need all to survive. What you must understand is everything is connected. When you take too much of something, it has a domino effect and everything around it suffers. There needs to be a balance. Mother Nature has a way of replenishing itself if just given a chance. We need to work with nature, not against it. I feel I'm finally in a place to help do the work that needs to be done, to help make a difference rather than trying to convince people in the work that needs to be done. Because I'm getting tired of asking. I started repairing old beaver dams on my own time. That's how important this is. My daughter helped me fix the first old beaver dam. And Beavers hadn't been in that area since 1980, and it held water all year round, all year long. So we did that last year. And I've also had nation members come out and help us as well. We have we have elders that have been talking about beavers and animal populations in our communities for over 40 years. Another elder, his grandparents first started taking him to meetings when he was 10 years old. That was 60 years ago. And they were talking about our animal populations for years already at that point with great concern. I've been hearing more and more from our elders saying that nobody is listening to us. So for the first time, I'm in a position to help do the work that needs to be done, but we can't do it alone because we want to build hundreds of these a year. Unfortunately, funding is the only thing that limits us. So this is where we have started our first project on. We have partnered up with OIB and BC Wildlife Federation. This is a showpiece of um, what a project like this can accomplish. It is the largest to date being implemented. Um, so if you can see here, here's right up at the top here at this top hill. This is Mount Baldy. This is where Cote Creek starts. And from the top, from that mountain down to our work site, which is right in here, it is that's about 7 kilometers long. And in that stretch of seven kilometers, we had gone in and assessed that creek, and we had found 90 old beaver dams there. So some of them are beyond repair, but we've counted about 70 of them that are repairable, and we've patched up 21 of them so far. And in this section right here, we have installed 18 structures. So this, all this area that's in here, this used to be all underwater back in 1980. Um, so we had built structures using, you can see right here, we've got some BDAs here, and we also installed some PALs. So this is no longer engaging this wetland anymore. It has started to downcut the stream bed. So what we're using these structures to help trap that sediment. And what we're trying to do is to build that stream bed back up so it'll help engage this wetland again. So these PALs, the PAL is a what is it? Post-assisted log structure, just a fancy word for log jam. So we're using these together to help encourage widening out that stream and help with a little bit of erosion on the side so we can help build the bottom of the stream bed and build it back up. So we did a bunch of pictures before we built the structures and after the structures, and we had immediate success. And so if you see here on the graph, we had um, built some water wells with some data loggers, and we also measured the flow of the stream before and after. And the reason for that is when people see beaver dams in these BDAs, they see a lot of the water that is held in behind these structures. And people start to think, oh, well, they're holding all that water back. Well, if you see in the graph here, the water flow never actually changes. If you think of these wetlands like a pool, Once it gets filled up, it flows over, and the same amount of flow continues down these waterways. So it's not actually, it's just slowing it down, it holds it up. And when the water comes down at high water in the springtime, these wetlands aren't filled to capacity. They can still hold about 30% more water underground. So the high water, it won't be quite as severe if we have wetlands in the system. So um, this waterway has everything wrong with it. It is a perfect example of what clear cutting does to a small stream. At the headwater of both these creeks, Cote and Incomeep, there are clear cuts. Both are badly degraded with lots of erosion, cattle erosion, landslides from flooding, and flooding at the mouth where setback berms have been installed to protect property. Wetlands are not engaged anymore. What better place to start a project than this? Another place we'd like to start on is where I wanted to start this whole project in the first place is Vasu Creek, as this waterway is getting dangerously close to drying up in the summertime, which is an important spawning ground for salmon and Chinook. We have so many salmon and Chinook coming back. They need all the spawning area that they can get. Another one we want to get started on is Shuttleworth Creek. For years, the water has gotten dangerously low, stranding hundreds of fish. ONA fisheries staff had spent years in the past collecting fish with buckets and bringing them back to the river. Now it goes dry in the summertime. Some other ones we want to start on is Shingle Creek, Ellis Creek, Trout Creek, Peachland, uh, Mission Creek, Nicola River, Salmon River, Smilkameen River, Equesis Creek. These are all important waterways within our Okanagan watershed here. So our next steps are looking for input from the community on where beavers used to be or places that you think might support beavers. Now we are looking to involve all the communities throughout our nation so that we can all work together and help teach and support with this project so they can run with it and apply these methods around the headwaters in their areas as this needs to be done throughout the whole Okanagan Nation and beyond. So I challenge you to stretch your mind. Just because things have been done in a certain way for so long doesn't always mean it is the right way. Limlimt, thank you.
Lilimp. A really great talk, Delaney. Thank you so much. You've got some fans in the chat and in the Q&A here. So we're going to move on to questions. So folks, just a reminder, if you'd like to ask a question, we encourage you and welcome you to put your question into the Q&A function, not the chat. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to relay some questions to Delaney. We've got quite a bit of time, which is great. And we'll just have a bit of a conversation. Okay. So I'm going to get started. Kurt and Brian Gustafson asked a really similar question. So Kurt started out by saying, "Hi, Delaney. Thank you for presenting this great topic. Can you please speak to your experience with provincial regulation and staff around restoring watersheds with the BDAs?" So then he says, "Full disclosure, I'm an aquatic ecologist with the Ministry of Water, Land and Resource Stewardship." Next up, I'm going to read Brian's right away because it's really similar. Thanks, Delaney. I'm a big Beaver believer here. I have been involved in a number of BDA projects. The regulatory process seems to be the most complicated and expensive element of this simple low tech work. Can you please speak to some of your experiences with the regulatory and permitting process, where you found your biggest challenges?
So we've been working with BC Wildlife Federation, and it is a long process to get some of the permits in place to start working on these areas, and they've done a lot of the heavy lifting on their end to do that. And the reason we had put in a bunch of these data loggers to measure the water and stuff was because at first, like, this has been done in the United States for 20 plus years, building these beaver dam analogs, but it's just starting up here in Canada. So it's taken quite a bit of convincing. The province wasn't quite sure if these were a good idea. So seeing that it doesn't change
Mhm.
um, the water flow, and they're seeing these areas that the water table is actually raising back up. Now that they're convinced, hopefully moving forward, it's going to be a lot easier to get these permits because, we've answered some of those questions for them that it is actually helping. So, um, there's, what is it? I don't recall the section 11, I believe it is. There's a guy out of, so with the province, there's two different permits that you can get uh, on private land and then on crown land. And there's a guy out of the provincial office. His name's James Telford. He's he's he wants to make getting the permits that he issues as seamless as possible. He's come out and he's looked at some of the stuff that we've done on um, uh, I can't remember the site up Willowbrook. It's on I can't remember the people who we did there on their property. Um, but yeah, he came out and seen it all, and he was just like, oh yeah, like he was in. So
Mhm. Okay, great. It's great to hear that you're having success and support there.
yeah.
Thanks, Delaney. Okay, I've got so folks, you guys are some of you are doing this already, but and thank you. But I didn't mention that there is the upvoting feature on the Q&A. So you can see that some people are using it, but if you see a question that you like and you want me to ask, just give it a thumbs up. I'm going to combine two questions again, just like I did last time. So there's because they're similar. So the first question comes from Catherine Hayes, and she says, have you seen any instances where the BDAs have brought beavers back into the area? And then similarly, Phil McDonald asks if you have had beavers reintroduced to the restoration areas.
So in the United States, um they've had a number of spots where the beavers have taken over after these BDAs have put in place. I haven't seen it personally myself yet,
Mhm.
and we've put some in on a couple of different creeks now. We haven't seen them, and we're focusing more on headwater type areas. We've got lots of beavers down in the valley bottom in the Okanagan here, but they're continuously trapped every year, and they're having trouble expanding up into the highland because
Mhm.
um, their numbers are being taken back every year. So we haven't seen them make their way up to some of these structures yet on our sites.
Mhm.
This spring, we are planning on relocating beavers back up into the headwaters. That's kind of the reason we started all of this was all for the purpose of bringing beavers back up. So we're looking at spots not just where we've put beaver dam analogs, but in some wetlands that are still up there where we've seen historically beavers have been in the past, where we see sign where there's enough food. Um, and yeah, so we're strategically trying to place them in spots where if they decide to go up one tributary, they can go up that one or they can go up another one if they decide not to stay where you put them because, we're only guessing. We're trying to make educated guesses on where we figure beavers would do good with, if there's enough food, but in the end, we're still just guessing.
Yeah.
And so, we try and um, figure out as much as we can, and hopefully they stay where we want them. But if they don't, we try to put them in a spot where they have multiple areas to go from there. So,
Hmm. Okay. Okay. Super interesting. Need to see where you want to take that too. Okay, I've got another question. And it says there are a lot of people that would like to integrate traditional knowledge into the restoration projects alongside scientific knowledge. Can you share your perspective in this regard, perhaps highlighting some of the challenges and ways to address those challenges?
well, you know, I've, there's each band, they have like traditional knowledge keepers. And when projects get, you know, start to get off the ground, they usually go and talk to the knowledge keepers, the elders, to get their input of if there's areas of concern or things that they want to see or things that they know that would help contribute to the project. Um, like myself, I've shared a couple of things that has been shared with me, but am I myself? I'm not a knowledge keeper myself. There's specific people within our community that are things are passed down to from elders and stuff like that. So there are people, um, that so any project within the O&A, um, we go out and we ask um, the elders and stuff, and
Mm,
for any contributions they have to any of our projects. So,
right.
yeah.
Okay. Maybe I'll just hop on that. I think I read that there were elders who helped to identify locations of some past beaver dams. Is that true?
Yeah, they were actually this spot we were looking at. We were doing some wetlands assessments, and I seen an old beaver dam, and we went down to Osuyas Indian Band. That's where I'm from, and we went down and talked to some elders, and we told them we're wanting to start on this project of building these beaver dams, BDAs, and they had mentioned um, the spot that they would like to see being brought back to wetlands is actually the exact spot that I had brought up to them, and they said that's one of the spots that on Cote Creek there that used to be a wetland.
Mhm. Okay.
So, and they told us some other places where some other beavers historically were and stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, I'm going to keep trucking here if you're up for it. You've got lots of questions.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is from Elizabeth Law. Um, Forgive me, it's a bit disjointed, so I'll just read it as best I can. So thanks, Delaney. I'm super interested in this method, but unfortunately here in the Elk with selenium issues, there's a question of how these sediment ponds can raise the bioavailability of sediment. Can you speak to any unintended, perhaps negative consequences of these structures? And my second question is how far up the headwaters can you place the BDAs? Okay, so unrelated question, but
So any negative, I'm not really sure of um any negative effects that these like when we set them in, most places we're building BDAs is where the creek is really incised. So we're trying to raise that stream bed back up. So at that'll take multiple years to do that. So we'll only build it up about halfway of the incision, and then the next year we'll come
Mhm.
back and we'll rebuild it up, and then we'll come back a third year and monitor and to see if it needs to be built up any farther than that because um, so when these so also the like they're building, it's almost like a natural filter that these structures are acting like. So if they're, further down in the valley bottoms and stuff, they capture uh fertilizer. It doesn't totally like clean them out like 100%. Like it might clean it up. It's the muck that's the mud that's in behind them, all that sediment and stuff, that really fine stuff. There's a bacteria that's inside that sediment that starts to consume the things like nitrates and phosphates, um, which is helping to help with water quality by, taking that stuff out of there but by no means is it going to take 100% of it out. From what I've read, I think it was like it can clean up to like 40% of it if I recalling correctly.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and then it helps settle out because the water's um, slowing down in behind these structures and these beaver dams. The heavy metals and stuff kind of settle out in behind them. So, that helps out with the water quality as well. So, yeah.
Okay. Okay. A bit of a segue from one of the things that you just said there, to Christina Anderson's question. And she says she's interested in hearing about your thoughts about how much maintenance is tied to these BDAs after they're installed. Thanks for an excellent presentation, she says.
So, if you're building these BDAs, you have to go back to check on them every spring because the high water comes through and um, is going to start kind of eating away at them a little bit. So you gotta kind of refix them every spring. But with our process, we want to do is we want to use these structures to help kickstart the restoration, and then hopefully we can get beavers moved in there so we don't have to do any maintenance. That's the end goal. Um, yeah, because it's, water coming down, water running over them constantly.
Yeah.
But it's only, we've only got earmarked to go back in the spring and do the maintenance on them.
Okay, yeah, excellent. Okay, Lindy, thanks for addressing Jade's question. That's fantastic. I'm going to jump down to Suzanne Bailey's question. Suzanne is our presenter next week. She says, thanks, Delaney. Great overview of the benefits of beaver dams and wetlands. Have you noticed many creeks that used to be permanent creeks that are now temporary or seasonal in your area? And would you consider those potential creeks to use BDAs on?
Yes, that's actually the creeks that we want to start on first is the ones that they used to run all year round, and now they're starting to go dry in the summertime now. So we're hoping to get focus at the headwaters of some of these creeks and tackle some of these wetlands that used to be um, up and around the headwaters and get them reestablished up high. So then, we can help with the the water coming down, and hopefully some of those streams will continue to run throughout the summer when they're starting. They they historically used to run all year round, but now they're starting to go dry. So we're um yeah, using all these BDAs to, help reverse that a little bit.
Okay, excellent. So Delaney, I feel like I want to bet. There's so many more questions that we can't even get to them all. I'm gonna cut us off for questions, unfortunately. But everybody there, you can see Delaney's email is there. He's sharing it generously. And he's really open to carrying the conversation with you and answering questions that you might have. We'll also provide him with any extra questions that we didn't get to. I'm really sorry. I just want to keep us all on time, as I know we're just on our noon hour. Um, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share a screen back here. And I just want to thank everybody for joining us. I want to thank Delaney for taking the time to share this information with us. It's so valuable. We can learn so much from you. And as a group, you can tell there's a lot of people who are wanting to do similar work. So I hope that this can help inspire future sort of conversation and collaboration and problem solving and all those things. Um, so thanks. I, of course, want to mention the sponsors that are making these webinars possible. Thank you very much. We couldn't do this without you. And I want to plug the talk that's taking place next week, which is on on the same topic, but in a different part of the province and coming at it from a different angle. So like I said, oh, sorry, that'll be Suzanne Bailey, who we'll hear from on February 26th. So you can join us for that. Suzanne Bailey will be presenting on the role of beaver dams in wetland conservation and restoration in a warming climate. Has a lot of really interesting research to share and recommendations moving forward as well. So I think that's it from all of us. Thanks, everybody. Wonderful conversation.